this. So I'm going to take a case study. Senna is an African medicinal plant. Senna alexandrina is native in Eastern Africa from Egypt, Sudan, down to Somalia, and also in Western Asia on the other side of the water in Yemen and Saudi Arabia. It was introduced to India during colonial times. So India is a major supplier of Senna, but in the case of my company, we do get most of our Senna from India. We get some from Egypt, and in former times we also got it from Sudan. We always preferred Sudanese origin. The material in Sudan is wild collected. The material in India, of course, is cultivated. But I will use this as an example. Move ahead here. So we've been talking about African, I just wanted to point out, we've been talking about hibiscus, which of course is an African medicinal plant, and it is widely used globally in herbal teas. And of course, rooibos and honeybush are from South Africa and also very popular in Europe and the United States. And my company uses some rosemary in herbal teas as well, and that's mostly wild collected in Northern Africa, Morocco, and Tunisia. We were talking about preventing contamination of the herbal tea crop, and we talked about GACPs already. I just wanted to mention that the WHO GACPs from 2003 were meant to be general. They were meant to stimulate regional or national GACPs, and then of course species-specific GACPs. So here's just some examples. I was involved with a project in Morocco, and they came up with GACPs for medicinal aromatic plants in Morocco. On the far right, you can see then they came up with good collection practices for wild rosemary from Morocco. The GAPs for Senna there's from India, and there's also a post-harvest FAO document for hibiscus as examples. So what I'm going to talk about is the comparison of the regulatory frameworks for marketing access using teas that contain Senna as an example, looking at Australia, Canada, European Union, United States. So I picked Senna for two reasons. It's an African herb, it's widely used in herbal teas, and it's highly regulated. So it's regulated in a much different way than, for example, rooibos or hibiscus, because it's, in most countries, it's considered an active pharmaceutical ingredient, even in the herbal tea bag. So in Australia, a Senna tea could be a listed or a registered complementary medicine. In Canada, it needs to be a licensed natural health product with marketing authorization granted and a product license granted by the government. European Union, actually in European Union, a Senna tea cannot be a registered traditional herbal medicinal product. It actually has to be a licensed, well-established use herbal medicinal product. And in the United States, theoretically, it could be a botanical drug. There are no Senna botanical drug teas at the moment, so most are notified dietary supplement products. Here's some pictures to illustrate. In each case, each of these pictures are teas based on containing Senna leaf. The first one is Australia. So this is just an example from the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods. It's an online database so you can search listed or registered products. In Australia, the next one's Canada. This is a product manufactured by the company I'm with. It's a licensed natural health product. And in the European Union, that Sidroga tea is a Senna tea, Senna leaf tea, and that is a well-established use herbal medicinal product, which had to go through almost the same as a new drug application. And then the last is Celestial Seasonings, the company that Trish was formerly with, and there's laxative tea in the United States is a dietary supplement product. Here's a little bit of information about market access requirements. Australia recently has streamlined their process. You can actually list a complementary medicine online. There's forms to fill out online. So there's two avenues. Listed medicines that are in the Australian Register of Therapeutic Goods, self-certified by the sponsor, the company that manufactures the product. And there's a somewhat more rigorous product where you submit your safety and efficacy dossiers to the government for their review. In Canada, under the natural health products in Canada are a subset of drugs rather than foods. And to get a product on the market there, you do need to submit a product license application. So you have to submit your evidence of safety, efficacy, and quality. In this case, for example, the Senna has to be demonstrated to be complying with a recognized pharmacopoeia monograph. In Canada, they recognize the British pharmacopoeia, the French pharmacopoeia, the European pharmacopoeia, and the United States pharmacopoeia. So your specification has to demonstrate compliance with the full monograph for test and release of the active ingredient. European Union, Senna teas there, as I mentioned, are well-established use. Your submission document, you have to use the common technical document format. You have to go through you have to prepare a patient information leaflet. This is a really interesting process because you're actually required to do comprehension studies in each of the languages where you're going to market your product to make certain that people, when they read the patient information leaflet, will understand the information. That's the readability test. United States dietary supplement, this is actually post-marketing notification. So you have within 30 days of putting your product in the market to notify the FDA with a letter. If you don't get a letter back from the FDA objecting to anything, then you have notified the FDA, and you can presume that they have no objections to your notified dietary supplement product. However, with that, you have to, there is a consequence here. Your notification letter to FDA does need to be signed by a responsible person in the company. And the letter needs to include information that you do have evidence to support the claims being made. So that is a legal and regulatory liability. You do need to have it. And while you don't have to submit your evidence to the government, they can ask for it during an audit, and you need to have it. Specifications in Canada, I already mentioned. When you fill out your application form, your product license application, for each of the active ingredients, there's a field in the form where you have to put in the acronym of which pharmacopoeia you're using as the basis of your specification. As I mentioned, oh yeah, they accept Japanese pharmacopoeia as well. And it depends. If you're in Canada, you can even get a product license that's a traditional Chinese medicine, in which case they would allow you to use the pharmacopoeia of the People's Republic of China as the basis of your specification. Canada requires you to use the monograph that's in entirety. You can't cherry pick different things. So you really have to have all the tests that are in the monograph for composition, identity, purity, strength, and quality. And they need to comply. And in our case, we use an independent laboratory in Canada to test and release each batch before it comes out of quarantine, before the teas can get shipped to the distribution warehouse. I already mentioned well-established use. This is interesting because in Europe, the European Medicines Agency issues the labeling standards monograph. And in the labeling standards monograph, it tells you which quality standard the active material must be in. So the European Medicine Agency's monograph states that the Senna is maybe marketed in the pharmaceutical dosage form of herbal tea. It also requires that the Senna leaf quality test in conformance with the European Pharmacopoeia monograph. So those are legal requirements. Also, in the process of submitting your dossier for marketing authorization in Europe, which I've done in the past, you have to provide complete supply chain traceability. So your quality dossier has to have information about the producer groups, the method of agriculture, method of production, everything that you have in place. You have to attest that you have suitable GACPs implemented at the production sites for the active ingredient. And that needs to be part of your quality dossier that you submit to the authorities for their review. And you think, gosh, it's just an herbal tea. But in Europe, the bar is pretty high. In the United States, specifications, well, these are the final rules for GMPs and for dietary supplements. And in the United States, herbal teas that make structure function claim statements are dietary supplements. An herbal tea in the United States could be a food beverage tea if there's no claims and if all the ingredients in the herbal tea are classified by the FDA as generally recognized as safe for use in conventional foods. However, many, actually, to most medicinal plants are not grass for use in foods, and really can only either be in dietary supplement products, or if they're a botanical drug, they could be in drug products. The specification must establish the identity. The FDA only requires you have one test to establish identity, which is not sufficient. They say you have to have one scientifically valid test for the identity of the component. At my company, we use all of the ID tests that are in the pharmacopoeia monograph, and they all have to concur. So it has to conform to macroscopic, microscopic, thin layer chromatography, and also the assay, if there's an assay with HPLC, before we're satisfied with that. And sometimes even with that, there's still some questions, and you have to go a little bit further. These are the monographs. So we use the Senna leaf European monograph for our specification rather than the USP, and that's because we're in international markets where the European pharmacopoeia is accepted in more countries than the United States. Well, it just depends on the regulatory framework. Either one would be fine, but at the moment we use the European pharmacopoeia for the basis for Senna leaf specification. That's the end of my slides. Just a quick case study on an African herb that's widely used in medicinal herbal teas around the world, highly regulated, and I think hopefully we have some time for some questions.
Thank you very much, Joseph, and thanks to Trish. So now we will field questions, so you can go ahead, unmute and ask your question.